Thank you. And getting an applause before you start. Hi, how are you? So, thank you very much for this opportunity. I'm glad to talk to you about IBM Food Trust, something very close to our heart. Something else, of course, as they mentioned before, a lot to do with the Sustainable Development Goals. And yeah, food is, of course, something that is closer to us than anything else. IBM has a number of blockchain initiatives. And IBM Food Trust is a very important one. Do I have a clicker or something? Yeah, thank you. And of course, everybody's putting food on the table. It's very important that the people that we're feeding are getting something that we want to give to them. We always have people who are getting ill because of food, so that's a very annoying thing if you have somebody who's dear to you and you fed that person and he fell ill. So that's really consumer trust. You want to be absolutely sure that food is the right food, that food that you want to put on the table. Not only for us individuals, but of course also for companies. That be big companies. If you say there's something wrong with food at a certain supermarket chain, then it is that supermarket chain. You know, with 10,000 outlets around the world, maybe one article in one of those supermarkets. But if that's wrong, the whole name is tainted. So it's for everybody important. It has business sense. It has personal sense. So there's a lot to do with it. And this is food. Excellent. So, yeah. So here some of the items that I already touched. 1 out of 10 people get sick each year because of foodborne disease. So not everybody dies, but it helps as well. It happens as well. You see the number is staggering, 420,000. So that's not nothing. There's also the issue, of course, that to find out where it came from isn't that easy either, because most of the consumer packaged goods firms are completely paper-based. So if you want to check where does this package of beans come from, you have to plow yourself through an enormous amount of paper, and by that time there's already a new issue. So that's really not helping. And there's of course an enormous amount of waste. Of course, also to do with this paper-based business. It's very difficult to process it through logistics, and that's why a lot of food, too much food, is being wasted. Not that you can entirely eliminate it, but you can bring it substantially down. And there's a lot of mislabeling also because of that, where people use paper, people make mistakes. So that's another issue that we need to address, that we're trying to address with our blockchain. And this causes, of course, an enormous lack of trust by people. That's why more and more people don't really like to buy at big chains. They think that it's better to buy at small shops. Is not necessarily the case that that's better, but it's the feeling that you're closer to the source, and that's really something that we have to fight, because in the end, most of us are, of course, dependent on a big food chain, and that is a global chain. Transparency has been mentioned before, essential, that you can be open about what's in the food that you're selling, what you're buying. You want to know what's exactly, is it genetically modified, is it not? Does it have gluten or not? And then when it's on the package, have to trust that it's really like that and that it's not mislabeled, as we see here. So, complex food supply, the data is very much siloed, so it's not shared. It's sometimes available within a specific silo. But of course, if you are eating a piece of chocolate, there is milk in that chocolate, there's sugar in it, and there's so many products in it that are all managed in a silo base. You want to know everything, and you don't want to know it just for one of those products, but for everything. And you often need intermediaries to find out this information. If you want to exchange information, you need somebody in between, which is of course a bottleneck in anything you do. Intermediaries are by definition bottlenecks. The paper-based problem that we mentioned before, and there are lots of differences in the way information is being stored. One company calls something, for instance, burgundy, and other company calls it red, just as an example. That's already how you get differences in interpretation. You want to speak from sing from the same hymn sheet. Everybody has to use the same words to make it clear. But at the moment, this is what you see. Everybody is talking to everybody. Lots of Chinese whispers, words that are becoming misinterpreted, and that's something we absolutely need to address. So can blockchain help with this? Well, I think if we make it distributed, it only gets more complex. But the fun of blockchain, as most of us know by now, is that we distribute a database that is identical. Everybody has the same copy of the database, of the blockchain on their server. So it is, you exactly have the same information. And it also doesn't allow you anymore when you have a blockchain to speak different languages. If you call something red, then it's red for everybody. If you, in your own ERP, enterprise resource planning system or anything like that, use a different name, that's up to you. But if you are sharing information with somebody else, you have to have a standard. Blockchain forces standards. So that's what is the beautiful thing about distributed. By being distributed, and everybody having to have the same copy of the database, and the system is checking that everybody has the same copy, and if you don't have the same copy as others have, then you're out of the game, makes it immutable. You can't change something. If you change something and somebody else doesn't change it in the same way, you're out of the game. So it's immutable. Everybody has to have the same copy, and that's beautiful as well. So there's no doubt about that you're talking about the same things. And it's making everything digital. Companies that don't have things digital are forced by this way to make it digital. And by that, becoming more transparent, more efficient, etc. And we see that developing countries also make leapfrog often beyond what we're doing. It's not that they're running behind us, sometimes they're even passing us by because they can do it straight away, the right way. We have a lot of legacy systems, but if you still have to implement it, this can bring you far ahead of us. So we see already in IBM, we now even have large research centers in Nairobi, for instance, and we see things developing very fast. So for Iris, I would go again to Africa, you will be surprised how advanced sometimes things are there. So have a look at that. So distributed ledger, digital transactions, and immutable data, those are the characteristics that make blockchain so interesting for a sustainable and reliable food chain. So that's also the solution. Before we saw this picture with all these lines, everybody talking to each other, and all these Chinese whispers coming up. And now you see that everybody, all the parties in this global food chain, restaurants, retailers, logistics companies, manufacturers, consumers, are all reading from the same hymn sheet. It's the same data everybody's looking at. So, independent data sharing platforms, and that's what blockchain forces, and whether it's permissioned, I rather don't talk about private blockchains. The internet isn't open either as such. We perceive the internet as free and open, but there are commercial companies providing internet to us, and they don't share all the technology they used to us. That's their private business, but how they do it, what they bring to us is transparent on the internet. Blockchain works the same. And whether you use a permissioned blockchain or a public blockchain, it doesn't make that much difference for this, but that's perhaps nice for the panel later as well. So instant transparency, that's the great thing. Whereas before you had to plow yourself through lots of data, go from one silo to the other to find out what part of that chocolate that you add was wrong. Was it the sugar, was it the vanilla, was it the milk, was it the cacao that was in it? You have to go through all these different silos, and now it's an instant transparent picture because all that data is shared on the blockchain. Through standards, GS1 standards, EI standards, blockchain standards. The data immutability makes that the records that you are keeping are perfectly auditable. Actually, it puts auditors out of business because you can straight away see the information that you need on the blockchain. Everybody can. It's not that everybody will, because if you have, for instance, a formula that you don't want to share, you can encrypt that on the blockchain, so it's not can't be deciphered by everybody, but it is on the blockchain for everybody. And if you want to know exactly something wrong with that, what's been stored there, somebody can force you to open that up. If you don't, you're out of the game. And that's how it also is a wonderful solution for dispute resolutions. If somebody says, it wasn't me, right? Well, the blockchain, that's a very difficult thing because very soon everybody can see this is where the problem goes to, this is where it all converges to. And everybody can see it because everybody has the same copy of the ledger. So dispute resolution is something that can often be automated by blockchain. So a very important part, and often this prevents a problem from happening. If you know that the information that you provide to the blockchain, the products that you register on the blockchain, can be traced within seconds, you think twice before you do anything wrong, because it can be seen. So this is how garbage is very quickly detected. All right, so IBM Food Trust is actually working together with a whole number of parties. You see here parties in the retail area like Carrefour and Walmart, and you see companies that are actually food producers such as Dole, Driscoll's, Nestle, many others. And also already we see much deeper into the food chain, so producers of food, also already the meaning of half products, because Dole and of course GSF are, but also half products and raw materials also moving into the chain. And it allows us for a number of functionalities that are now available. More functionalities will become available, but the very important one is of course trace. Trace the location, trace the status of the product, upstream, downstream, across the supply chain. One of the first things people want to see. And these are very complex, costly solutions at the moment. With blockchain, this becomes a much easier, especially if everybody joins, just like the internet. The internet wasn't that practical when there were only a few 100,000 companies were on that, on the universities and state companies and defense firms. But now billions of devices, billions of people are on it. It becomes very easy and very cheap also to exchange information. So that's also what you see with blockchain. In the beginning, you have to get a critical mass. When you have the critical mass, it becomes easy and cheap. Certification, it was mentioned before, I don't know who did it, perhaps it was Iris, but certification is of course, you don't really want certification, you really want to have the real thing, and this is where we come to where the rubber hits the road, how real products can be linked to the digital twin on the blockchain, for instance. I think it's an interesting topic to address later as well. We have some solutions for that as well, but at the moment certification is still very important, and the most important thing is that when you get a certificate, you can find out that the certificate is true, and that you can find out that the person or the company who created that certificate can be held accountable. Because nowadays, often certificates are just a paper to say, look, here I have a certificate, I don't know if it's true, but they said it was true, and perhaps it's been copied, right? Well, if you have it like this, on the blockchain, the certificate can't be copied. So even if somebody is creating garbage, and you are very quickly being found out, and so it already helps. Not the end stage, but it's a very important, valuable in-between stage. Getting fresh insights, I mean fresh in the sense of how fresh is the product, but also fresh insights in totally new insights into a product. Is this piece of chocolate a chocolate that is 200 miles, or is it 20,000 miles? In the sense of, does the vanilla come from Madagascar, and does the milk come from Sweden, and does the sugar come from Brazil, or is it all locally grown? So a 200-mile piece of chocolate is a lot more sustainable, of course, than a 20,000-mile piece of chocolate, right? So that's a very different, fresh insight, and then you get lots of third-party apps. So just like the fact that this can be seen as a permission blockchain doesn't mean that many other companies and people can create new applications for it. That's what we do at the moment. If you work with apps for Google or for the iPhone, for the iOS platform, you do it for a commercial company that have their own platforms, but everybody can do that, right? So this is very similar. You can absolutely create new apps and add to that. It can be at a fee or it can be for free. It's just how you define it for the world. So, yeah, just a couple of modules that I mentioned before. I don't think that's very relevant. So this is perhaps interesting how the Food Trust enables a new ecosystem to take place. It starts with business value. It's not just nice to have. It has to have absolutely real business value. On one hand, I have a little time. Yeah. Going too fast. I have to wrap up. Okay, I could go on for hours. So we're lucky that she's here. So. But okay, I'll just skip this. I'll just go to one of the last slides. This is, I think, a good one. This shows you how wide the spectrum is of organizations that have to feed, that have to be connected, and it's really big. And so there are about a couple of million growers, there are about a million, up to a million food manufacturers, there are hundreds of thousands distributors, there are billions of consumers. When they are all connected on the blockchain, you get real strength. At the moment, we already have millions of transactions on the IBM Food Trust. We're only at the beginning, but it's like a hockey stick, right? First, you got a couple of joining, and then all of a sudden it goes up and you have the mass, just like happened with the internet. Okay, I'll stop there because I would like to say more, but that's it for now. And if you have questions, I'm very happy to answer. Thank you.
Great. Well,